Support for Central Florida Public Media comes from the UCF College of Business, offering the new online Space MBA, designed for professionals in innovative and high-growth industries. Beginning spring 2026, students gain advanced business skills through the lens of the space economy. Learn more at business.ucf.edu/Space MBA.
Questions from kids and a tasty space book. You're listening to Are We There Yet?, the radio show exploring space exploration. Hi, I'm Brendan Byrne. Kids ask the best questions. That's why we're turning the mic over to our younger space enthusiasts wanting to ask an astronaut their burning questions about space exploration in a segment we call Curious Space.
I heard that an astronaut eat like food in like a paste form and out of a tube. Do you guys really do that? And if you do, what is it like?
Veteran NASA astronaut Winston Scott joins us to answer that question and more. That question from our young listener got us thinking a lot about food for astronauts, so we decided to dig into the archives and revisit a conversation with space food scientist Vicki Claris about her book, Space Bites: Reflections of a NASA Food Scientist, Questions for Astronauts, and Cooking for Space. That's ahead on Are We There Yet? So we're turning the mic over to some of our younger space enthusiasts with a segment on Are We There Yet? We call Curious Space. Last month, our producer Marion Summerall took a trip to the Orlando Science Center to ask kids what they want to know about space and what it's like to be an astronaut. We took those questions to veteran NASA astronaut Winston Scott. Winston, welcome back to the show.
Well, it's my pleasure. Thank you so much for having me back on.
Hey, we've got a slew of new questions from kids from the Orlando Science Center, their Astrofest that they had a few weeks ago. These first few questions, I think this must have been around lunchtime because all of these questions go or deal with food. So I'm going to have you answer this first one from Ashton.
My name is Ashton Montesino, age 9. Does ice cream turn freeze-dried when it goes into space, or do you have to buy it freeze-dried?
Freeze-dried ice cream. What about it, Winston?
Okay, that's a good question. Yeah, no, we actually take the freeze-dried, so to speak, ice cream into space with us. So it's manufactured, it's freeze-dried on Earth, and we take it into orbit with us. We do not take regular ice cream and freeze dry it up there. You know, all items are relatively heavy, including regular ice cream. Everything that has water in a liquid is heavy. So we freeze dry it before we take it away from Earth. Therefore, it's much lighter and more compact. And then we take it to orbit with us. Some foods we can unfreeze dry, we can rehydrate it. Some foods we just eat it in a freeze dried state when we get up there. So anyway, back to the original question, that the ice cream is freeze dried on Earth when it's processed, and then we take it into orbit already in its freeze dry condition. I wonder if you've had any, well, you probably can't answer me back. Just think about if you've had any of our freeze dried ice cream, whether you like it or not. The freeze dried ice cream sandwiches, they are pretty good. The sandwiches, I think the sandwiches are better than the old freeze-dried stuff that I used to take back in my day.
I've had just the freeze-dried ice cream, and it's kind of chalky, not very enjoyable. I was going to say, do you have? Is it just ice cream as a sweet treat you have up there, or are there other desserts or candies you get to have on orbit?
Oh man, we really take some nice treats into space with us. One of the best ones is the chocolate-coated candies. The brand name is M&M. We take those into orbit with us. Of course, they're not stamped with the commercial label. We also have cookies in space, the different types of cookie wafers, kind of like Girl Scout cookies. We take those into space with us. Jell-O instant pudding, the different Jell-O desserts. And also, yeah, we take a whole slew of sweet treats into orbit with us.
Great minds think alike, because this was Benji's question.
Do you have cookies?
Do you have cookies? You do. You answered that. Yeah.
Yeah, Benji, I just talked about that. Yeah, we take cookies into space with us. They're typically vanilla squared wafer type cookies, kind of like if you know what Girl Scout cookies look like. They're nice vanilla wafer type cookies, and then they're really good. Yeah, we do take cookies into space with us. Mm-hmm. You have to be careful with cookies because they crumble and crumbs float all over the place. So we want to be sure the cabin air cleaner is working, circulating all that air and filtering out the crumbs so that when we eat our cookies, we don't get crumbs floating all over the spaceship.
Winston, we talked with some chefs at the Kennedy Space Center who cook for the astronauts before you all leave. And something that I've heard from astronauts all the time is the cookies that are at the quarantine facility are delicious. Would you agree that the cookies you have before you leave the planet are some of the best cookies you've had?
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, all of the food that's prepared for us by the chefs, the dietitians here at Kennedy Space Center and also at Johnson Space Center. We spend part of our quarantine each place, and all of the they prepare for us, man, it is really good. It's top-notch food, really cooked by some very top-notch chefs. So yeah, the food's good stuff.
That's a good segue into Dax's question. This is our last food question.
I'm Dax and I'm 10 years old. I heard that astronauts eat like food in like a paste form out of a tube. Do you guys really do that? And if you do, what is it like?
Back in the old days, the astronauts before me ate all of their food out of tubes. They had, for example, ham, and it was in a tube, and they ate kind of like toothpaste. And then if they had some cream or something, but no. Nowadays, our food is like real food. We eat it with forks and knives and spoons. But we have to eat it very carefully because it will get away from you and float away. For example, if I wanted to have scrambled eggs for breakfast, I have to prepare my scrambled eggs. We put the water back into it, rehydrate it. Then I would take my spoon or my fork and very carefully reach into the packet and take out only what I want to eat. Also, the foods are typically sticky. We want foods that will stick to the fork or spoon. So my scrambled eggs are designed to sort of stick to the spoon to minimize the floating all over the place. So yes, the old toothpaste tube food days are gone. That was long before my time. Nowadays, we eat real food with real utensils or in a sandwich. You can eat food in a sandwich.
This question from Ella is related to food, but it's not about eating the food. So I will leave it to Ella to ask the question.
Hi, I'm Ella. I am 9, almost 10. My question for an astronaut is what happens when you need to go to the bathroom? Because I know they do have toilets, but like what do they do with all the waste?
Oh, Ella, that's a really, really good question. And our toilets are very sophisticated devices, and they connect to a sort of a septic tank system. So when you use the toilet, if you have to urinate, the toilet uses a vacuum system, kind of like a vacuum cleaner. You urinate into it, and it takes all that water and places it into a storage tank, a septic tank, as we call it. And then if you have to defecate, you have to sit down and move your bowels, you do that, and the toilet takes all that waste material, places it into a storage tank, a septic tank. The liquid is kept from the solid. On the space shuttle, if the liquid tank got too full, we could dump the liquid waste out into space. Now, don't worry, it doesn't fall to Earth. It would dissipate in space. On the space shuttle, the liquid can be recycled, cleansed, and reused. Now, that may sound a little gross to you, but when you think about it, we drink recycled wastewater here on Earth. It's either recycled by good old Mother Nature or it's recycled at the water reclamation plant. So again, when the liquid waste is put in a septic tank and then it's purified and cleaned and reused again. And again, the water is very, very clean. It's as clean as any water any place on Earth. Very important that we recycle everything that we possibly can in space. Can imagine good hygiene is very important in space, just like it's important here on Earth. So we have to use the toilet. We have to keep the toilet clean. We have to keep our hands clean, and we have to keep our faces, our bodies clean. We want to be healthy in space. Don't want any astronauts getting sick up there.
All right, we're changing gears here. Harper has a very unique question and one that I haven't thought about. So I'm very interested to hear what your answer is. So here's Harper's question.
Are there any volcanoes or like thunderstorms in space?
That is a really good question. You know what, Harper? Space is an amazing place. When you're here on Earth, if you want to look at weather, if you want to go outside and look at the weather, you have to go outside and look up. But when we're in space, we're above the weather. So we go float up to the window to see weather. We have to look down. And I can remember on my space flights, looking out of the window, looking way down and seeing the thunderstorms and seeing the clouds, seeing everything beneath me. So there's no weather in space. All the weather on is very, very, very far beneath you. One of the cool things I remember doing is looking out of the window on the dark side of the Earth. So it's nighttime down there. Way down below me, I could see the thunder clouds and lightning rippling through the top of the thunder clouds. Way, way, way down beneath me is really a cool sight. But yeah, I was way above the weather. I didn't have to worry about hail or lightning or rain or anything because I'm looking down on it.
I would like to get up there for hurricane season so I could just skip all of that, right?
Absolutely. You can see the hurricanes from space. You can see the whole thing. See it forming the spiral. Oh, yeah, absolutely.
All right, this one is from Olivia.
My name is Olivia. How long does it take for an astronaut to get from Earth to space? How is it possible for an astronaut for them to breathe in the little suit?
Okay, good. Olivia, thank you. Really, really good question. The ride from Earth to orbit is typically about 8.5 minutes. It is really, 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 really fast. To sustain orbit, we have to reach a speed of 17,500 miles per hour. When you think about it, when you're riding a car with your parents or you're riding on the school bus, you're typically driving at maybe 60, maybe 70 miles per hour. We go up to 17,000 miles per hour in only 8.5 minutes. It is really, really fast ride. And your other question about breathing inside of the suit, well, the suit has oxygen in it. It has big tanks inside of the suit, and it feeds the oxygen up through my helmet and in front of my face so that I can breathe in. Otherwise, we would not be able to live in space. So in hostile environments like outer space, underwater, other places, we have to have oxygen fed to us so that we can breathe. Really good questions. Thank you.
All right, finally, Winston, here is our last question from McKenna.
Hi, I'm McKenna Melia. I'm 12 years old. Did you ever think that you were going to be an astronaut when you were a kid?
McKenna, that's a really good question. And the answer is no. When I was a little kid, I was interested in the space program. I followed it on TV. I watched space movies and read the books and all, but I didn't think I could become an astronaut. In fact, when I was a real little kid, 5 or 6 years old, there were no astronauts. The original Mercury astronauts had not even been selected yet. So it was not a reality to me. It wasn't until I was an adult that the space program became real to me. And the good news is that you and people your age are growing up with the space program, and you know that more than likely you will have the opportunity to fly in space. If not as a professional astronaut, you might be able to go as a tourist, or you might work at a hotel in space. You might be a singer, dancer, athlete. You might be a doctor, a lawyer, teacher in space, because we're expanding and doing so many, many different things. So you're at the right age that you will probably have an opportunity to go to space one day if you want to. Thank you so much for your question.
Inspiring, Winston. Always a pleasure to have you on the show. Winston Scott is a veteran NASA astronaut, fielding some of the greatest questions that we get on the show from our kid listeners. Winston, always a pleasure. We'll have more questions for you next time.
Sounds good. Thank you so much. Have fun.
Just a note, Orlando Science Center is a sponsor of Central Florida Public Media, but it does not have control of our editorial content. Still to come, a glimpse into an astro diet.
The freeze-dried food that they have on orbit is designed for them to rehydrate. So they're adding water back prior to consumption. And I would say, just in rough numbers, that freeze-dried is about 25% of the menu.
A conversation with a NASA food scientist. That's ahead on Are We There Yet? You're listening to Are We There Yet? I'm Brendan Byrne. Deep in our solar system, objects like a giant space rock could hold the answers to major questions about our planet and even the creation of our solar system. One of those objects has caught itself in a cosmic dance with Neptune. So why are scientists so interested in this phenomenon, and what can it tell us about the creation of our own solar system? We'll answer those questions on a future episode of Are We There Yet? But for now, we're talking about our last book recommendation for the summer. The psychology of food plays a key role in space, according to food scientist and author Vicki Claris. Her book, Space Bites, dives into her 3-decade-long career working as a chef for astronauts. We spoke with Vicki last year about her memoir. Here's part of that conversation now. Well, Vicki, welcome to the show.
Well, thank you. Thanks for having me.
So the book is called Space Bites, Reflections of a NASA Food Scientist. I'm going to start by asking you about space food. And let's think, it's almost dinner time here where I am when we're recording this conversation. If I'm on the International Space Station today, what am I having for dinner?
Well, you get to choose. The core menu that they have right now on Space Station is what we call a standard menu. And so it's a planned menu, but it's packed pantry style, meaning we put all the meats together, all the veggies together. There's 8 different categories that they have available to them on orbit. And so when they get ready to eat, they're going to go they're going to go pick what they want from each of those categories. They'll have one of each of those 8 categories open all the time on orbit. And so even though it's a standard menu and we're packing per the menu, they're not eating it that way. They're eating it in the order that they want to. Plus, crew members also have some preference food, smaller volume that they choose the contents of prior to flight. And that can be, their favorite candy bar that's not part of our menu, or commercial food items, or if they're an international astronaut, like from the European Space Agency or Japan, their country can send some items that will get packed as part of their preference to send to orbit. So basically, NASA is feeding everybody but the cosmonauts. The Russians send the food for the cosmonauts, and NASA's sending the food for everybody else. But they share on orbit. They definitely trade food back and forth.
Like the middle school or elementary school cafeteria, huh?
Absolutely, yeah.
I love it. Let's talk about what that food kind of consists of. When I think about it, I think of the freeze-dried space ice cream you get at the Kennedy Space Center Visitor Complex, or like a brick of dehydrated something. That's not the kind of food that they're eating up there right now, right?
Well, their freeze-dried food is part of the menu, but I can tell you the freeze-dried food that they have on orbit is designed for them to rehydrate. So they're adding water back prior to consumption. And I would say, just in rough numbers, that freeze-dried is about 25% of the menu. Then thermostabilized, which is basically canned food, is about 25% of the menu, except NASA does their cans in pouches. Like if you go down the seafood aisle at the grocery store now, that's all in pouches. Well, NASA sends their canned products in pouches as well because it's lighter than a can. And so saving weight is valuable when you're launching into space. And then the other 50% of the menu, approximately, the standard menu, is what we call commercial off the shelf or COTS items. And the COTS items are going to be like cookies, crackers, candies, nuts, so powdered beverages. NASA doesn't do those custom. They buy those and package them for the crew members to use them on orbit. But the freeze-dried and the thermostabilized are almost all custom formulations done by the food scientist at NASA.
Food scientist, it's such an incredibly cool sounding title. And your book, Space Bites, is really a memoir about your career and what you've done as a food scientist. Tell us a bit about how you got to this position in the first place, because I am regretting my career choice now that I've watched you at this point.
Well, it's interesting. By training, I am a microbiologist undergraduate. And during my last semester, I was short 1 hour of micro elective. And I went to my advisor and he said, do a white paper, just go to one of your profs or something. But I saw on the list this food microbiology course over in the College of Ag. And I said, no, I'm interested. So I went and took this food micro course. and got very interested in the application of microbiology to the processing and preservation of food. One of my major professor came and lectured during that food micro course, and he said, I'm looking for graduate students. So I was all in. I went and got my master's in food science. Then I came to Houston and got my first job. And I was doing quality assurance for a hospital food plant that made food for about 5 different hospitals. And while I was working there, I started attending meetings of the local chapter of the Institute of Food Technologists, which is the professional organization for food scientists. And I met some of the food scientists who were working down at NASA. And I said, that has got to be the coolest job a food scientist could have. So if you ever have an opening, call me. And about 18 months later, I got a call. They weren't specifically looking for me, but they said, would you know anybody who would be interested? And I'm like, yeah, I would be interested. So I went down and interviewed, and that's how I got my job as a contractor at NASA. And I worked for about 4 years as a contractor, and then switched over and became the civil servant manager of the shuttle food system.
And that your career in this industry at NASA spans some 3 decades, right?
Mm-hmm.
Let's talk about some of the things that you think about when you are planning food or planning a menu. You talked about some of the things like weight is something that you consider. What are some of the considerations that you make when you are preparing food for these shuttle astronauts or International Space Station astronauts?
Well, of course, shelf stability is huge because on shuttle and station, we don't have dedicated refrigerators and freezers for food. So the food has to be able to last a long time at room temperature, at ambient temperature. And so that's probably the biggest constraint that we have. Once in a while, they'll have a freezer going on a cargo ship. If it's going up, it's probably bringing home medical samples or science samples. But if it's empty on the uphill trip, the crew might get some Dove Bites or some frozen treat like that. So that's like Christmas when something like that arrives. Yeah. But another big constraint that we have is crumbs. So, when you're preparing a food, you have to be conscious of the fact that it's going to be eaten in microgravity. And so food, it'll float. If it's got a lot of crumbs, that's going to get loose. And, they have to have a clamp on their straw on the beverage so that the fluid won't float out. And when we would prepare a formulation, we would have to look at the viscosity of it. How thick is it? Will it stick to the package when they eat out of the package? Will it stick to the utensil, the fork or the spoon that they use? Because, the crew always talked about, they always had a towel handy in case something got away from them. But it's like, if you make the mess, then you've got to clean it up. So you want to be very careful about, and they learn to be very careful about how they eat on orbit. So, yeah, that's a big constraint.
No coffee cake or crumble cakes or anything like that.
No, that doesn't really work. It's really funny. In the book, I talk about the fact when Pringles first came along, prior to Pringles, all the chips were in bags. And so nobody during my career wanted to take a bag of chips. They knew it would be pulverized when it got to orbit. But when Pringles came along, a couple of the crew members were like, hey, this might work, it can. And we tried to caution them. They said, well, it's can, but there's a lot of crumbs in the bottom of that can, whether you know it or not, And sure enough, and we didn't really, we tried to caution them, but we didn't really say, no, you can't do it. So a couple of them took them, but, they came back, oh, we should have listened to you. That was a huge mess. And so after that, the word kind of got around and nobody really asked for canned potato chips again.
Yeah. And that's fine because you can't really get your hand in there anyway. So, it's probably not a good deal up there anyway. So, Vicki, you mentioned that a lot of this stuff is up there almost pantry style. Are the crew is the crew assembling their meal at night, or is there actually cooking in orbit where you grab these different ingredients and put them together?
So no, it's really all pre-prepared food. All they're really doing is maybe warming it or adding water to it. Although they have a oven to warm products on orbit, the temperatures do not get hot enough to actually cook anything.
Have you found that there's been some favorite foods for crew, and what seems to fly all the time?
When crew members first go to orbit, all the fluid shifts to the upper part of their body, so they are congested. It's like having a cold. It takes a while in microgravity for that fluid to equilibrate. And they used to make jokes that when they got on orbit, the first thing they did was line up at the bathroom because they had to eliminate fluid, right? But it interferes with their ability to smell. And so on shuttle, particularly because the flights were short, a lot of that congestion would last during most of the flight. So we had a freeze-dried shrimp cocktail. It was powdered red sauce that had horseradish in it. And so it had a nice little kick. And so it was very popular among the crew because when they were congested, that aroma still, that flavor still got through. And, it's still on the menu, carries over into Space Station. But in Space Station, they have a lot more, like in Shuttle, we had the little restaurant style condiments, single serving, tear it open. Now on station, they have the plastic squeeze bottles. And they have a small chiller, about the volume of a typical home microwave, where they can keep the condiments, so that they're safe to keep for a long time. And so red sauce, hot sauce, very popular among the crew members because, they're eating out of packages instead of off of plates. And so that inhibits somewhat their ability to get aroma from the food. And a lot of people, when you have a cold, you realize how much aroma contributes to the flavor of the food because if you really got a bad cold, everything's going to taste the same because you're not getting the aroma off of it. You're not getting flavor. The condiments are really important to add that flavor because they are eating out of packages. When you heat food down here, all the aroma rises and comes to your nose. In microgravity, when you heat, it can dissipate in different directions. So that's limiting what you're getting aroma-wise. And you're also in a closed environment with a lot of other odors that compete. It's not surprising that crew members anecdotally say that they feel like their taste buds were somewhat dulled when they were on orbit. And a lot of it is just because they're not getting as much aroma from the food.
That was space chef, food scientist, and author of the book, Space Bites, Vicki Claris. That's going to do it for this week's show. If you're not already, be sure to subscribe to the show's podcast feed so you never miss an episode. Do that on the Central Florida Public Media app, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, the NPR app, YouTube, really wherever you get your podcasts. Stay connected with the show. Follow us on social media. We're on Instagram and Facebook. The handle is @AWTYSpace. If you got an idea for a future episode of the show, or you want to join us as a guest, reach out. Our email is arewethereyet@cfpublic.org. Are We There Yet is a production of Central Florida Public Media. Our producer is Marion Summerall. Editorial guidance from LaToya Dennis. Support for Are We There Yet comes from our listeners. Until next week, I'm Brendan Byrne. Thanks for listening.